see you as one of the featured speakers at QCF, because I think a lot of times within our work as activists, a lot of times like spirituality gets shoved away and like our faith gets put under a rug, or even just like sometimes feels like it becomes irrelevant. I was wondering, like, how do you identify with your how do you identify spiritually, and how does that help you in your work?
Yeah, identify as a Christian. It's interesting. When I grew up, we went to church because we had to, right? It was like, had to go to church. Looks like I'm at church today. There wasn't like strong belief. And it really wasn't until the protests that I like understood the power of belief, because we did so many things that were dangerous and hard and challenging. And like we made it out and we're covered and protected in a way that I just I will never forget. And I'll never forget what our prayers felt like in those hard moments. And like that really brought me closer to a sense of God as like a real thing. It's interesting. The way that it shows up in my work is sort of like a reminder that so much of what we do is fight for what we can't see. And it also, when I think about the Bible or like biblical stories, remind me of the power of a small group of people to change the world. That like sometimes I worry that people get concerned that like everybody doesn't believe this thing yet. And it's like, well, no, everybody never believed the best gift we ever got, right? Like
Correct.
Everybody didn't believe in Jesus. Everybody didn't believe in a host of things. It was like a small group of people who believe so deeply and then help spread the truth. And that's, that is certainly how the protests were, right? The protests were, it's sort of interesting now because everybody's a protester, but when it was hard and dangerous and we were not popular, there were not a lot of people who were on our side, and I'll never forget those days.
Yeah, the days when it's like, it was just like the ragtag group of people who really started to inspire everybody else around you.
And who kept going in the face of everything, right? So there were a lot of protesters in the street, and there were, there's a core group of people, a lot of people, like a big core group, who just like stayed, even when like families turned on us, when the media turned on us. It was people who like we knew we were right. So it's interesting again to like see this tide now where like everybody's a protester, and protesting is cool, which is a net positive. But people forget like the really wild beginning.
So how much of that do you still carry with you? Like, I feel like there is oftentimes like there's that lovely performative Twitter activism, if you will. Whereas like, as long as I like tweet the right thing, as long as I'm following the right people, then I know that like I'm doing the right thing. I'm doing enough. For you, when you say activist, tell me what you actually mean by that.
Yeah, I think, I try really hard not to sort of police these words because, I think about my grandmother, somebody who didn't call herself any of these things, but did so much work to help keep the block clean and like those sort of things. So I'm not super stressed about the way people identify. But when I think about the work of activism, it's people who sort of see something and take action, or who join a group of people and take action. And I think about the people at the beginning who did that. I think about the people today who do it. I think about the people who, especially younger people who have like a plan to do it in the future.
Right. I'd love to like hone in on a little bit more about your family, because I feel like we always hear about the DeRay who is out in these streets. But what was growing up like for you? Like, who was your family? Who was close? What was life like?
Yep. So my father raised us. My mother left when I was 3. So me and my father and sister really close. My great grandmother also really close to her. She has since passed, but she lived with us until I was like 11. She lived with us. And then it was just my dad, and, he got married 10 million times. And we're like, woo, no more marriages. But the 3 of us are still really close. So it was the 3 of us really. And then my great grandmother for the beginning 10 or 11 years. And it was good. We were poor, but not sad, right? Like didn't have a ton of physical things, but had a lot of love. My father, is one of 5 kids. One uncle was in jail for almost all of my childhood. But the other kid, all his other brothers and sisters really helped raise us. And we were the only kids in the family until pretty recently. So one of my aunts she had twins who were about 10-ish now, probably 10-ish.
Right.
10, 11. So they're pretty young relative to me and my sister DeRay. So we grew up as like the only kids, and we had a great time with them. They were great. So that was fun. It's interesting when I think about being gay, though, because this last go round, like this last sort of fashion cycle during Pride Month, there was all this Pride gear, and I buy a lot of Pride stuff, both as a way to support and as a way to sort of signal. And there were people who were being really critical of like the commodification of Pride, which makes sense to me. Like the critique is important. But I just think about, and the reason I still buy Pride sort of things is like, I would have loved to see anybody in Pride material when I was a kid, because as a kid, it was like, there was nobody, right? Like I didn't see anybody in my neighborhood who was out. There was really nobody. Like the only kids who were out in high school were picked on so dramatically that like that didn't seem like an option,
Yeah.
So that was, I didn't really sort of join a community of gay people until I was well into adulthood. Like I didn't know where to find it, and wasn't around one until pretty late.
I think the first gay person I ever met was in college, and it was the RA in the other building, who then later, like, I joined a fraternity in college because apparently that's what you do to make friends when you're lonely. And he was like one of the only like first gay people I ever met in my life, and like set a model. It was like, oh, there's not a right or a wrong way to do this. There's just like, you just kind of have to sort of begin. And I mean, that wasn't until I was like 22. And
Right.
Even when I was in my fraternity, I was still like not fully out of the closet, even though like, I mean, you can spot my glitter from like 1,000 miles away, even if I'm not wearing it. You know what I'm saying?
You're so funny. Yeah, it's real. It's like that's why it's so cool to see this generation of young people, because it's like the way they are able to show up in school, and then like it's just so beyond anything I would have imagined as a kid.
I know. It's like, I look at these Gen Zers. Is that what they're called now? The Gen Zs?
Yeah.
I look at the Gen Zers and I'm like, how you know your gender already? How did you do that? How did you figure that out? I'm still working on it.
No, it's incredible. It's like a really, it's sort of like a startling and powerful thing to witness. You're like, wow, you all have like figured this out, and I'm not even jealous. I'm just like proud. I'm like, wow. I'm like happy that the collective work like create a space for you to live like this.
Yeah, it's helpful, and it's like I look at like I was running a house church for a while, and we got a few people who were like these 17-year-old kids who got kicked out.
What's a house church?
Oh, house church for us was like just think of like small group, but like this is my only spiritual community. You know what I'm saying? It's like rather than going to like an actual church building, we just did it inside of home.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So like we started this little house church where we were very explicit about who was welcome, including queer people and trans people, and who we centered, people of color, people who fought to be heard elsewhere. And I was getting these like 17-year-old kids who got kicked out of the mega church in town, or one of the mega churches in town, for coming out. And I was like, wow, like I would have never been able to dream. Like I could have never come out in my youth group. And y'all did, and you paid the price for it. And that's like kind of like the reason like I'm super passionate about the work, because kids shouldn't lose their place in their youth group. Like it's wild to me.
It's also like really interesting to think about what the growth in the internet just opened up for people, that like,
yeah.
I remember, how old are you? I'm 34.
I just turned 30 a minute ago.
Okay. So do you remember like the AOL chat rooms? Like, do you remember that?
100%. Yeah.
Like that was the extent of sort of chatting on the internet. And like, even when I think about how like risque and whatever people thought it was like still pretty random, it like wasn't, it was like sort of organized, I guess, but like not really. And you think
Yeah, it's
about
just like
like,
you would like kind of wander around into random places and see who would actually respond to you.
yeah, and it was like this was before Twitter, this is before Google even. Like I remember, I'll never forget asking my dad to buy me like one of the internet directory books, because like that was how you found web pages, you know? Like
Huh.
how would you know what a web page, like how, there was no Google, so like how would you know what a website was? There were these books like that looked, they were sort of big like telephone books.
Whoa, I think I probably just missed that because like I don't remember that at all. I do remember the dial-up though, the sound.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, so the dial-up is a thing, but yeah, there were books. There was like they were like huge. They were literally like phone books that were by topic. So it'd be like gardening, and then it'd be like a whole section on, like it'd be websites about gardening. But that is so crazy. You know, you look back and you think about how do we navigate? But there are kids today who like they can see themselves in the world online in a way that was just not real for us. You know?
Yeah, and thank God, because like I feel like I'm learning more about how to break down my own binaries because of all of these youths coming out of the woodwork who seem to know. It's almost just like all of the things that were a big deal for us. It's just like, oh no, that should be normal. It's normal for us now, and I'm still working on it, working through that. I wanted to hone in on something. Like my first introduction to you, besides seeing your name in all the headlines, was on an like it was like an advocate, like a talk that you gave a bazillion years ago, and the advocate posted your talk.
Yes.
And you said about going from out of the closet but into the quiet in relationship to your father. And I know so many of us have had similar conversations with our parents. So I'm wondering, like, if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about what that process was like for you with like helping your father work through feelings and just being a gay Black man in America, like, and like how that relates to like a family who might be more traditional as well.
Oh, so what I was saying then, and it came from a tweet that I did online, like during the protest. This idea that like I was never in the closet, I was in the quiet. Just because you didn't know doesn't mean it wasn't real. And when I my dad had us young. You know, it's so funny. I think about like what it would be like to have kids at 24, and I'm like, woo, y'all didn't know what y'all were doing. We didn't know. You know, if I had kids today, I would be.
I have kids right now.
Yeah, they had no clue what they were doing. I have much more sympathy as an adult now because I'm like, I'm 30 something and can barely raise myself, let alone a whole child. So shout out to Calvin. But I remember the first time we were trying to have this conversation, Calvin's my dad. He just like wasn't, he didn't know, poor daddy. He didn't know what he was doing. So we just like stopped it. You know when it's like getting bad, you think like, you know when it's veering bad and you're like, I love you, you love me, you're about to say something crazy and we're probably never going to recover from it. So just stop.
Oh no. Yeah. It's like when they're saying like, I'm about to say something. I don't mean to be offensive, but ...
Yeah, it was that tone. He wouldn't have the language for like, I don't mean, like, it was the setup though was like, I really want a kid or something. It was just like, Daddy, let's just do this later. Right. So then we just didn't talk about it again. And it wasn't like a thing. It just, cause it was like high school or I was about to go to college. And then in college, I had this huge crush on this guy. And I called my dad because I didn't know who else to call. And me and my sister are really close today, but like we weren't, you know, we went to different high schools on purpose so that we didn't have to sort of be around each other anymore. And I was always in student government and she was like softball and whatever. And because she's older, I was always like DeRay's little brother. Or she was always DeRay's big sister because I was always like the student government guy and we hated it. So she went to different high schools. We went to different high schools. So we didn't become close until after college. And so I called Calvin and I was like freaking out about this crush. But I didn't say gender. I just like was like, I really like they're so great. Da, 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 da. And then in the middle of the conversation, it's clear that it's a guy.
Right.
And he is just like, he's like, doesn't say anything. He gives me great advice and we just like keep it moving. And that was it, you know? And he was so good about it. And it was just so easy and simple. And that was sort of it. And I know we talked about it later. And he would, you know, it was like this, I felt like I was on a TV show. It was like, I just want you to be happy. And then you're like, okay, Daddy. Okay.
He was so like, on the one hand, it's like, I'm really glad that this wasn't a huge deal like the way that I made it in my mind. Were you like wanting a different reaction from him, or did it feel like, yes, that was right on time?
No, he was great. It was, I think that, I think part of like where we grew up in Baltimore and the way our family was set up, I think we sort of grew up pretty quickly. Like the way we thought about the world had to move quicker than, I think that kids probably should have to move in their mind. But he was good, like I think that he had to unlearn a lot of things about like what it meant to be a man and have a boy,
Mm-hmm.
like what is it like to be a dad? What is it like to be a father and have a son who is gay? And like, will the name live on? Like all those things that those were issues for him.
Mm-hmm.
Are you gonna be healthy?
Like issues of legacy.
Yeah, like those sort of things were things that like came up later and he had to work. Like that wasn't my work to do. So I was very happy when DeRay had kids because it was like grandkids, got them done. Woo!
Yeah, that is exactly it. My mother for like a long time was just like, I just really want grandbabies. It's what I want. And I have 3 brothers, so like you can. It's as beautiful and as I mean, it's as good as it can get. I mean, I really lucked out with my brothers. They're wonderful in so many ways, and they're also such dudes in so many ways.
Right. I can only imagine.
But thankfully, my little brother had a baby, or his wife had a baby, and my oldest brother's wife had a baby. And I feel like I am just now in full-blown gay uncle mode. That is my calling in this life. Please do not ask me to procreate.
Right. And it's like, maybe I will have kids, but now I don't feel like the world's going to end if I don't, whereas like, and he wasn't like disappointed. You could just tell he was like, I love you so much. I'd let you be such a great dad. And you're like, Daddy, you're killing me.
Also, I notice how you call him Daddy. And I think that's just very sweet. Like, I mean that completely sincerely.
Yeah. It's funny. I either call him Daddy or Calvin. So there's no real in between. So people are like, do you call him by his first name? It's like, well, yeah, because the alternative is Daddy. So
Daddy.
I'm like, Daddy.
Yeah, I'm also from the South though. So like, Daddy, what are you doing? Like, that's totally normal for me.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Totally adorable. He follows me. I had to call. He looks at my Instagram stories, and you can see. And
is that a good or bad thing for you?
Oh, it's fine. And and it was so cute because he just never left a message. But my father has I know he has things to say just about everything, but he never ever left a message. So we talk one day and I'm like, hey, Daddy, you can like write back on these things. And he's like, oh my God, I didn't know. So now he leaves a message on everything. Like, okay,
oh, no.
happy medium. We got to find a happy medium. It's hard. A part of me would say that we actually the bridge is not as important as people believe, that like the numbers are actually on our side, that from a number perspective, like we've already won. The hard part is that they have screwed with the system so much to nullify the fact that the numbers on our side. So if our people vote and if there wasn't voter suppression, we'd be fine. Like this would not even be like it'd be a no contest win.
Yeah.
I think that part of
Stacey Abrams might be the governor of Georgia as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. This wouldn't even be like something that we're all fretting about. It'd be pretty easy. I think that I think that one of the things that's happened to people in marginalized communities, and I use marginalized with like a capital M. I think this is like a broad thing, is that the system has failed people for so long, so consistently, that they no longer believe the system can do good. And I think that is so part of our work, right, is to push people and remind them that like the system is a function of people. And as long as people can do good, the system can do good. When the system does bad, it's because people allow the system to do bad, right? So we need you to vote, not because it's going to change everything, but because it's a part of the way that we like write the system,
Yeah. I think there's the temptation to withdraw. And I think by withdrawing, it's like, therefore it cedes your power to the system that is going to continue to do what it does. And if one does not kind of like reinvest your power back into yourself and reinvest your power back into your community, then nothing can get done. And I think
I'm sympathetic to the people who withdraw. Like, I get it, right? I get that you sort of believed in the thing for so long. It didn't do anything to help you, I get it. I think that part of it is that like, we have to get all our stuff together so that like when people sort of reinvest, we can actually make it mean something,
Right. I think what I'm hearing, something, at least I'll say, something that undergirds my work, and I think something I would say undergirds your work / it was a subtitle of your book, is hope. And I'm wondering, especially in the season that we're in right now with, not saying war's bridging in Iran, like, we're getting close to war with Iran, but what gives you hope? What keeps you grounded even when there's every reason to despair?
So a lot of what called me to the street at the beginning was the fact that I used to teach. And, I think about all the kids I taught grew up in a world that did not treat them right, wasn't fair to them, and they didn't do anything wrong, right? They're 11. They didn't create this. They didn't perpetuate it. They didn't co-sign it. So for a long time, it was this belief that like, if we don't fight for kids, who will? And that like, I might not be able to stop the ill consequences for 50-year-olds, 70-year-olds, but I can certainly do something so nobody else has to experience this. So that's a part of it. I think now it is morphed into a deep belief that we can win, like sort of this understanding that like, we know so much more than we used to. So it's not a question of what to do, and it's not even a question of how to do it. It's a question of, will we do it? Like, can we tell a story in a way that puts people in this direction? Can we paint a picture? Can we, like, that is sort of where that's where the rubber meets the road in this moment. Like, can we actually marshal the resources to do what needs to be done? And like, I'm interested, right? Like, I think we can. I want to believe we can. And I think that this is like the moment. I think we're in the moment where we'll find out.
I think so too. I've been writing a lot about around reactivating people's imaginations, and I think you mentioned this in your talk at QCF as well, as like around the role imagination plays in the work, because it's something I'm a life coach, among other things, because a millennial has 1,000 side hustles, right? But something when I'm working with my clients, I'm just like, you have to start imagining. Well, I don't know what that would feel like to get over my depression, to come out to my family, to come out to whatever. But it's one of those things where, like, if we can't even imagine a better world, of course it's not going to show up for us, and of course we're going to feel demoralized and not do the work to bring it to fruition.
For sure, right? And like I said at the talk, I think one of the things that I learned during the protest for sure is that people of color, or people with marginalized identities, this sort of goes beyond simply people of color, but is when you grow up in a world with constraints, you learn the constraints as a matter of survival. You do. You know how long $20 goes. You know the route to walk home so you won't get harassed. Like, you learn all of it really well. And the problem is that we get so used to the presence of constraints that like you can't imagine. And imagination is by default a world where there are no constraints. Imagination is saying like everything's on the table. We talk it out. We dream it up. Like, that is like what it means to imagine. So it is like a real learning and unlearning for people to teach them how to imagine again. Like, to say like, okay, I get it. Yeah. I know this is how it's always been, but show me something else. And you'd be shocked. Like, even experts, like, I spent a lot of time with people who spent their whole lives studying one particular thing, and like, they really struggle to like help imagine a new future. They do a really good job of helping us decipher the past and helping us understand what happened in the past. But you ask some people like, well, what could we do next? And it is like, you would think you just like, I don't know, ask them the answer to like the hardest problem in the world.
There's a black theologian, I can't remember his name. He was popular. It was like he was like the precursor to James Cone. And something he talked about this story from like he was like first generation, like, first one generation separated from his grandparents who were slaves. And he was out in the field working with his mom, and these white Methodist pastors come up and they invite them to the UMC church. And his mother was already a pastor of the Black Baptist church in town. And he said, like, it is a diseased social imagination, which says that they are someone who is not a part of the beloved community. And that has just struck me as like, that's kind of the truth, is like, there is a diseased social imagination in our culture right now. And I think a lot of the work, at least from my perspective, is like to inspire hope is some of the most important work we can do. And I think it starts with just like being like, hey, like, what would it be like, for me, what would it be like for you to like walk downtown Atlanta and not feel like you're going to get harassed because you're wearing a crop top? What would it be like for you to go home to your family and not have to tone yourself down at all? What would it be like to have a city where there's no homeless youth, or homeless people in general? That's the other thing, is like, you said that like really struck me, is like, it doesn't matter if like we fix like these individual problems. We want to fix the system that is broken, that is making people become homeless, etc. But
yeah, one of the things that we do to help people imagine about the police is that we'll say, and I'll do it with you. It's like, think about the place where you feel the most safe. Do you have it?
Do you want me to say it out loud?
No. As long as you know it.
Yes, I have it.
Is that place probably is a place where the police aren't present?
100%.
And it's like, whatever that place is, whatever whatever makes up that place, like whatever's in it, we believe that everybody deserves a little bit of that. So whether that place has like love, food, shelter, caring people, I don't know, resources, like whatever it has, like that's actually what safety is. Safety is not people with guns standing behind you. You know what I mean?
Right. I keep thinking, like, especially past couple of weeks where there was that shooting at that church in Texas, and like there was 1 million people who had guns on them, and the dialogue from the people at the church was like, we're thankful to the great state of Texas for like providing us with laws so we could have guns. And I'm like, how do y'all not see that? Like, what if there wasn't a gun in the first place?
Right. If he had just come in yelling, then you'd have got him too, you'd have got him out and everybody'd be alive.
Yeah. And that just, it breaks my heart, because like, it always just comes back to like, it does not have to be this way. And it comes back to that a social imagination, of being able to imagine that. So I have one more question, and then I'll let you go.
Okay.
Be prepared. Are you in love?
Yep. No. So if you have somebody for me, let me know. Listen,
anytime you're in Atlanta, you let me know. I'll take you to some fun queer bars. We'll have a fun time. It'll be great. And also, you got a great smile. Like, it was just like, I was like, oh my gosh, his teeth are really that white and straight. That's incredible.
Oh my God, you're hilarious. Well, I appreciate it. It was good to be there, and I'm happy that was the first thing. I literally came from Ghana to Fort Lauderdale, and that was a good community to be a part of. And like I said on stage, it's like, I didn't know as a kid that spaces like that existed. So, yeah.
Well, come on through anytime.